Good evening, all. 7 points clear at the top of the championship table with 15 games to go. That doesn't sound half bad, does it? Norwich winning a third game on the spin, 1-0 here against Rotherham. It is Carrow Road behind me, and it is Dave Freezer here as well. I've succumbed to the lockdown haircut. I did shave my head in the first lockdown. Managed to avoid it in the second, but I thought it was getting a bit long. So we're not going to be getting into a barber's anytime soon, are we? So the light is reflecting kindly, not off the head. But you might be able to see behind me there. They did sort of redress Carrow Road a little bit today. Got some new banners from Lotus, which I guess is a bit of an acknowledgement that you guys aren't going to be here for the rest of the season. At best, it's going to be, a couple of thousand or something, isn't it? Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to set our sights on the first day of next season for when we first get a proper crowd back in here. And we are very much closing in now on a year since the last time Carrow Road had a full house, which was February 28th, the 1-0 win against Leicester. And Jamal Lewis scored that brilliant goal. I'm sure you'll remember. Just a depressing thought, isn't it, that it's been that long since Norwich have played in front of a full house, and particularly with how well they're doing, and the strange reality that from where they sit, there's every chance by the time that you guys are back in here properly, which cannot come soon enough, they're back in the Premier League, because they just it could not have gone any better today, pretty much. Watford won last night, but Brentford lost at Coventry in the lunchtime kickoff, and then Swansea go and lose 4-1 at Huddersfield. Bournemouth and Reading lose as well, and Norwich are just in a brilliant position, 7 points clear of second place. There you go, the table up for you just at the right time. And 15 points clear of the playoffs. They've now got 2 games against 2 more struggling sides in Birmingham and Wickham next Sunday, who are, of course, rock bottom and struggling, although they've got the odd result recently, but they are sort of cut adrift, and this is their first year at this level, isn't it? If, as they should, they win both of those games, then Norwich basically are in the playoffs. We know, as this game has demonstrated, there is not an easy game at this level, as every Norwich player and as Daniel Farker has constantly said, and I'm sure fans get bored of hearing it, but it's true. There is not an easy game at this level, particularly not this season. It feels like the sort of margin of quality is probably a little bit narrower, just because of the physical exertion and the compressed nature of the fixtures and things like that. That it means the sort of the gap in performances between the best teams and the worst teams is smaller. Although, as we're still seeing, I think Norwich, in terms of quality, is what is telling game after game now, isn't it? Timu Pukki, again today, 15th goal of the season, 4th goal in 3 games, another assist for Emi Buendia, his 9th of the campaign, although Todd Cantwell probably should get an assist as well for his step over, for sort of the intelligence to leave Emi Buendia's pass and let Pukki go, and it just meant it was the sort of parting of the Rotherham defence because of what he did, really. But yeah, great figures for those two. Emi, 9 goals, 9 assists for the season, so he's very likely to get into double figures before the end of the season. And then he's very much looking at Maddison numbers, isn't he? Which was, what was it that season? 15 goals, 11 assists, was it, in the Championship, off the top of my head? So Emi's going to be in that similar kind of ballpark, and we all know how well James Maddison has thrived since he left Norwich and since he left for a lot of money. But we'll park those things for now. It's just all going so well, and it shows what a difference a week can make. Quite literally, here today, you're probably sick of all of us guys who were lucky enough to be here moaning about how cold it was, because it was insanely cold. My phone had said it feels like -6 because of the wind chill, and it was, I think, the coldest football match I've ever covered. And then today it's like double figures. It's almost tropical in comparison. It was quite nice to cover it at a proper spring feel to it. The sun in Tim Krul's eyes and Grant Hanley and Christoph Zimmermann, which was the one change to the team. Enforced Ben Gibson dropped out with a bit of a back problem, Daniel Farker said after the game, hoping it's not too serious. But he was on the bench initially, and then they decided to take him out completely. Andrew Omobamadele, who had played 90 minutes on Friday afternoon for the under-23s, came onto the bench. Wasn't needed. Christoph Zimmermann had a reasonably smooth return to action. Hadn't started a game since the end of December, the draw here with QPR. But he has played a reasonable amount of games this season. It's just not too much recently. There was a couple of rusty moments from him, a couple of poor decisions, but overall, I think he'd be reasonably happy. And of course, goes home with a clean sheet and 90 minutes under his belt. So he's not going to be too worried. In terms of ratings, I'll go Cantwell as my man of the match, as the only player just about to get an 8. Just again, he's in such a great seam of form at the moment. His skills, his control, his pace. He just looks a happy player at the moment. Looks like a man on a mission, and just all over the pitch as well. And we heard Mark Robbins praise him really highly after the midweek win over Coventry, and I'm sure Paul Warren was quick to do similarly, because we know Paul is a Norwich fan deep down, isn't he? Although, of course, he's a Rotherham fan for a long time now, hasn't he? They have been the major part of his life, but Norwich still has a little place in his heart, doesn't it? So, but otherwise, I think I'd go 7s all around. Maybe if you're being a bit harsh, Mario Vrancic, Christoph Zimmermann, you could dip into 6s. Vrancic, just if there's one player who really is responsible for then this not being more comfortable, then it's probably Vrancic, unfortunately, who is playing reasonably well, but he's just not getting the results, and he's just not knitting things together enough. He's getting chances to score goals, particularly at home, and he's not taking them. And if he did, he'd be playing such a major part in this run of form at the moment, and all that sort of pent up love that there is for Mario from 2 years ago, for how much of a big role he played, would be sort of flourishing, because he is a popular player among Norwich fans, but it's just not quite happening for him. And Marco Stevenman was back in the under-23s game on Friday, so probably still at least a week or so, I'd have thought, away from being in contention for the first team. But Kieran Dowell didn't get on the pitch today and is going to be desperate for game time. In fact, Daniel Farke ended up keeping all his subs, despite the fact that Rotherham had made all 5 of theirs. He brought all of the subs on. I think all of them were made during injury time, 7 minutes of injury time because of a couple of injury stoppages. So the end of the game was not much of a spectacle, really. It was really broken up by those substitutions, so it worked from Norwich's point of view. But yeah, I mean, Vrancic, there were 2 chances for him in the first 10 minutes, the second of which teed up really nicely for him by Buendia, I think it was, and he really should. It was Pukki, sorry. Really should have been scoring, and just pulls it wide of the left post, and that would have made it 1-0 at that point. That's when it was still 0-0. And when you think back to the Stoke game last week, he had 2 big chances early then that were both set up by Max Aarons, didn't he? And it's a shame that it almost just feels like Mario's a little bit on the edge of the party. So hopefully he can just get one soon and feel like he's nailed down that place, because Daniel has said some nice stuff about him at the pre-match presser, hasn't he? And that he is, in his general build-up play, is playing his part. But as that number 10, you've got to have some goals and assists, haven't you? And unfortunately, they're not coming for him at the moment. But the breakthrough comes in the 17th minute, as I described. Buendia, lovely technique, low driving right-footed pass, defence splitting pass basically, and Cantwell has the presence of mind to step over it. Pukki's clean through and then can shape the angle. He basically can put it either corner that he wants and bends it round the keeper into the bottom right corner. That's 1-0. And all of Rotherham's pressing and the way that Paul Warren and his coaches drive them on and motivate them, it didn't work enough to prevent Norwich from having chances. They should have won this more comfortably. But you've got to give big credit to Rotherham. They are back in the relegation zone after this, but we all know that Paul Warren sort of works wonders with the small budget they have, but they work so hard and they are so organised. And the way that they press, it is impressive. That's 2 games this season. Okay, Norwich have done the double over them because they won 2-1 in South Yorkshire in October, but that was only because of a 95th minute penalty from Jordan Hugill. And they've pushed Norwich all the way both times. And, I'd be quite pleased to see them stay up, because they do try to play a bit of football as well. They don't park the bus. They do play 3 at the back, but they're not just total long ball merchants. Okay, they do go long sometimes, but that's what teams do when they're at the wrong end of the table, isn't it? So I think they deserve a fair bit of credit. They really did push Norwich hard, but they were fortunate that it wasn't more than 1-0. How many times we said that with Norwich this season? For as brilliant as things are, the position that they're in, and could well go on to be a brilliant season. It could have been so much better, couldn't it, if they'd just been able to take just a few more of their chances, which who knows. But at the end of all this, of this strange season, we might look back and think emphasises just how good they've been, that they have dominated so many games and should have scored so many more goals. It could have been a really, really dominant title win if things carry on progressing in the way that they're going. But we know still 15 games to go. There's still plenty of time for teams to cause them problems. So let's not talk in those terms just yet. But yes, the other chances, and Vrancic played one just behind McLean when he'd done all the good work, but then the pass was just behind Kenny with the goal sort of at his mercy. The big one, also created by Vrancic, which again emphasises how close he is to being a headline name, really. 38th minute, gets to the byline, pulls it back to on the left, pulls it back to Buendia, unmarked, in space. Looks like it's certain to be 2-0 just before half-time, and just basically thumps it against Clark Robertson, who didn't know a great deal about it. I've seen there's been a bit of talk about that being a handball, but I've not seen anything conclusive, and I don't think he knew anything about it. So I certainly don't think it would have been deliberate handball on the line. So 1-0 at half-time, and then Rotherham did have a couple of chances. There was an important block from Max Aarons at the end, but they hit the bar just after half-time. Ben Wiles, corner had been cleared to him, driven, really good shot, actually met it just as it was dropping to the floor on the volley, and it clipped the crossbar as it went over. So that was an early scare for Norwich in the second half. Buendia thought he got Pukki clean through 53rd minute. The offside flag did go up, but the Rotherham keeper Johansson made a brilliant save anyway, got down to his right to deny Pukki, and if that would have mattered, if it had counted, hadn't been offside, then that would have been a blinding stop. But it looked very marginal. But I think if you're playing in the Premier League and VAR was in play, then that would have been given as an offside. Yanulis came into it second half as an attacking force, certainly as well. He attacked well, pulled back to played Emi Buendia down the left. He pulled the ball back to Todd Cantwell on the edge of the area, and then just fired to the left of the goal, which is a shame because Todd's performance again deserved a goal, as it did in the midweek. And then there was Michael Heakway, the Rotherham skipper, made a really good block from McLean in the box. There was a clever bit of play from McLean, who chipped Pukki in with a quick free kick, caught Rotherham out, but Pukki couldn't quite make the angle work, and then Vrancic scuffed the loose ball wide afterwards. And then 73rd minute was sort of the last big incident in the game, which Freddie Ladapo, the substitute, had got in behind Yanulis, got to the byline, pulled the ball back, and Crooks met it and got clattered. Eventually went off because I think they were concerned about concussion, is what it looked like. I think it was Krul that he actually made contact with, but he got his shot on target, and Max Aarons made an absolutely crucial block pretty much on the line. So that shows you how close Rotherham pushed Norwich today. But with all those results going for them as well, it's a good weekend for Norwich fans, isn't it? And we can certainly look forward to back to St Andrews again on Tuesday night. Birmingham, they did get a win today. They I think it was 1-0. They won at Sheffield Wednesday. We know they're a very defensive team. They pretty much part of the bus. That's what we saw here. They've been struggling down at the wrong end. So it's going to be another very similar game. Equally, Wycombe next Sunday. We know they are really struggling and they will really fight. But both Birmingham and Wycombe, I think if I'm remembering that correctly, they are the two games that Mario Vrancic came to the fore in, weren't they? He came off the bench and scored the two late winners. So as we keep saying, and as I said at the top of the video, it is boring, but it is true. There is not an easy game in the Championship this season. And particularly these teams who are fighting for their lives. But if Norwich can get through those, they've won the first two of this little run. If they can win the next two, then what a position they're going to be in. And they should. If they turn up, if they play as we know they can, particularly if Cantwell, Buendia and Pukki continue in this seam of form that they're in at the moment, then it's difficult to see teams like that stopping them. But there's always a banana skin somewhere along the line, isn't there? And then there's that big game against Brentford on the following Wednesday night, who have now lost 3 on the spin, which is strange. And even Tony missing for them, injured as well, who's the division's leading scorer. So it's certainly getting interesting up at the top, and there's lots of teams chasing them. But Norwich have now got themselves into a position where they can they've reclaimed a position where they can breathe that little bit more comfortably, can't they? But good times. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you thought of the game in the comments below. And of course, Pinkton.com is a place to go for all of the post-match reaction and analysis.